And we're live. Hi, people.
Hello. Thank you for tuning in.
I'm Tiffany.
And I'm Corey.
And we're Gritty Hippie.
You see our shirts? If you're watching us on YouTube.
Which you should.
First of all, shout out to our friend Sade who did our makeup for this episode. We just wanted to show off her beautiful talents because Shorty's gonna go chase her dreams.
She's hot and in demand. She's global, baby. So catch her on Instagram at the Daydream, which is THEDE Dream, which will always be in the description below. So go check it out.
And we wish you the best on all your endeavors.
Yes.
And we're so proud of you. So fuck it up.
We love you, girl.
So join us in another thought-provoking conversation with friends you never had but wish you did as we defy societal norms and cackle over the most taboo.
You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Gritty Hippie and on Instagram at Official Gritty Hippie. Share this episode with someone you think may be interested in having this conversation, which is going to be very important today. And always, please leave us a rating and review of what you think of the episode. Also, check out our website, grittyhippie.com, where you will find everything you might need regarding Gritty Hippie. So just grittyhippie.com. And like we just said, we're wearing our merch. Woo! Ay. So go check out our merch and buy some things.
Yes.
And that will be in the description below as well. So
full disclosure, we are still learning. We're unsure and curious. Now this is episode 6 and it's all about relationships. Trigger warning, we'll be discussing the different types of abuse and how they manifest in relationships, which may trigger some people. If you feel unsafe, please protect yourself by coming back to this episode at a later date when you feel safer to listen. So, to start off, what is considered abusive? Now, abuse can take on many forms, including physical, which can include hitting, kicking, biting, pulling hair, pushing, grabbing, blocking exits, destroying property and precious objects. Emotional, which can be name-calling, mind games, or threats. Sexual, which includes assault and rape, as well as coercion, pressure, threats, and sexual bargaining for things in return. Financial, which is putting someone in debt, closing accounts without consent, giving an allowance that then infantilizes the other person, and neglect, which can be seen as withholding affection and attention. Now, intimate partner violence, or IPV, may continue after a relationship ends. For example, being stalked by an ex-partner. Abuse and violence are not natural and inevitable aspects of intimate relationships. Physical abuse typically occurs after emotional abuse fails to control the partner's behaviors. And overt physical and sexual abuse is a lot easier to identify and reflect on than neglect.
Abuse is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over their other person in the relationship. So there is a cycle of abuse, and it is divided into 4 steps, which I will break down for you. So the first one is tension building. So tension building can last anywhere from minutes to weeks, and stress builds, and the abusers may begin to feel wronged, ignored, or neglected, and they may accuse, yell, demand, and or have unrealistic expectations. While the target feels like they have to walk on eggshells, they are afraid and become anxious. It seems like the target is never right, and a small incident can create a difficult situation in seconds. The second stage is incident. In this stage, the target says or does something that the abuser feels upset about or threatened by, and the abuser attempts to dominate the target through verbal, physical, or sexual abuse. Targets may keep the incident a secret and not share what happened with others. The next stage is reconciliation. At this point, the abuser might feel remorse or fear and try to initiate a reconciliation. This can entail them buying flowers, gifts, taking the target out for a nice date or vacation. They often promise that it will be the last time of the abuse. The target experiences pain, humiliation, disrespect, and fear, and may be staying for financial reasons or because there are children involved or many other reasons. The perpetrator stresses that they did not want to do what they did, but the target made them because of their lack of understanding, wrong behavior, or because they just did not listen. The last step is calm, aka the honeymoon stage. An abuser is kind, calm, and interested and may engage in counseling as well as asking for forgiveness. The target may believe the abuser has changed and accept the apology. The perpetrator then starts to find little flaws or behaviors that they criticize in a passive-aggressive way, and apologies become less sincere over time. Little by little, the same behaviors begin to reappear, and the cycle again returns to tension building and starts all over again. So I have a few statistics. I have a few statistics that I got from the National Hotline of Abuse. It's domestic abuse, but I'm generalizing because it's not just intimate partner violence. So on average, more than 1 in 3 women, 1 in 4 men, and over 1 in 2 trans or non-binary people in the US will experience either rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner. Girls and women between the ages of 16 to 24 experience intimate partner violence at a rate that is almost triple the national average.
You ain't even know it. Till we break it down. We got you.
It's scary, the numbers.
How abusive relationships affect us emotionally, mentally, and in our everyday life. I'm going to go through this. Now, for starters, you have a constant or overwhelming confusion, difficulty concentrating and or difficulty making decisions, feelings of off balance or disoriented a great deal of time. You're experiencing depression, feelings of hopelessness and despair, feelings of helplessness, feelings of worthlessness or unlovable, undeserving, feeling out of control, increased self-criticism, lowered self-esteem and dwindling self-confidence, overwhelming guilt, debilitating shame, self-destructive behaviors such as hurting yourself, punishing yourself, or addictions, intense anxiety, constant fear, hypervigilance, chronic state of stress, lack of sexual interest or feeling, disconnection from emotions, disconnection from your body or disassociation, numbness, obsessive thoughts, isolation from others, signs of trauma such as panic attacks, nightmares, flashbacks, post-traumatic stress disorder, health problems such as chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia.
So why do people stay after all of that abuse? So many reasons. For starters, love. Also fear of danger or not being believed that they're being abused, immigration status, religious upbringing, finances, nowhere else to go or live, no outside emotional support, children concerns, taking the blame for the abuse, denying, minimizing, and rationalizing the abuse, and low self-esteem and confidence.
When it comes to denial, our denial provides an illusion of safety when we are being abused. Our low self-esteem, we end up believing that the abuser's narrative, which further lessens our self-esteem and our confidence in our own perceptions, is correct. As trust in ourselves declines, our love and our idealization of the abuser remains intact, and tolerating hurtful treatment weakens our self-esteem and our self-confidence and perpetuates the cycle of emotional abuse. When it comes to empathy, many of us have empathy for the abuser but not for ourselves. Our empathy feeds our denial system by supplying justification, rationalization, and minimization of the pain that we're enduring. We protect the abuser both out of empathy and shame about being abused, and we keep the secret of what we're experiencing. There's something called trauma bonding, where due to repeated cycles of abuse in which the intermittent reinforcement of reward and punishment creates an emotional bond that resists change. So it gets real scientific here, because it's just letting us know that now we're used to this cycle of up and downs. Mm-hmm. Our body is feeding on it.
It turns into an addiction.
Like an addiction. And speaking of addiction, there's also something called the Stockholm Syndrome, which is when you become mentally captive and you begin to see your abuser as your friend. You're loyal to a fault by wanting to protect the abuser rather than protecting yourself. And you're reinforcing the toxic bond and isolating yourself from help. So there's a quote that breaks down why people say that abusers never change. So it goes, abuse is a generative condition that almost never gets better on its own. Abusers become emotionally addicted to the adrenaline required to abuse, which gives them the temporary energy and confidence they typically lack when not abusive. The body builds a tolerance to adrenaline, which means they need more and more of it to get an acceptable level of energy and confidence. That is, they need to become more abusive. If they are attached to their victims, as most are, they experience at least an unconscious guilt and shame for harming them, no matter how much they try to rationalize, minimize, or justify it. The guilt and shame inevitably turns into self-loathing, which drains energy and confidence, thereby intensifying the need for adrenaline, because they need to
feed
their
off
ego
that, yeah,
in the first place.
Yeah. Jeez. Well, how to identify red flags? So every relationship is different, and domestic violence doesn't always look the same.
Yup. Wow.
So these are just some examples of red flags that you can use to perceive if they're being used. So telling you that you're never doing anything right, showing extreme jealousy of your friends or the time you spend away from them, preventing or discouraging you from spending time with friends, family, or peers, preventing you from making your own decisions, insulting, demeaning, or shaming you, especially in front of other people, controlling finances in the household, especially without discussion, pressuring you to have sex or perform sexual acts you're not comfortable with, intimidating you through threatening looks or actions, destroying your belongings or home, and gaslighting. I know this is a very buzzword, but gaslighting is a real thing, and it is used to describe abusive behavior, specifically when an abuser manipulates information in such a way as to make the victim question their sanity. Gaslighting intentionally makes someone doubt their memories or perception of reality. So they're trying to make you go crazy.
When identifying red flags, when people show you who they are, believe them. That was something that was told to me many years ago. The true colors of socially charming, charismatic domestic abusers are revealed indirectly through red flags, indicating circumstantial evidence of aggression. So, very early warning signs. These are just descriptors. One is a blamer, someone with resentment, someone with entitlement, someone with superiority, someone who's very petty, someone who's very sarcastic, someone who's deceitful. Intentionally or unintentionally, you're not presenting as who you truly are.
Right.
And jealousy. And finally, a rusher. So someone who doesn't respect your boundaries, right? Abusers deny or minimize the problem, as do victims, and may claim that they can't control themselves, which is untrue.
It's not true. They definitely know what they're doing. Being self-aware. So now we're just speaking on not the abuser, on yourself. Yeah. So tell yourself the truth of your abuse history. This will require many of you to come out of denial once and for all about exactly what was done to you, including your childhood. Become aware of your risk factors, including identifying and changing the negative attitudes and beliefs that create a victim or abuser mentality. Decide whether you are a good candidate to become a parent and learning parenting skills that will ensure you will not become an abusive parent and perpetuate those neglectful or abusive family patterns. That part, replay back. Work on developing more empathy for others and more self-compassion for yourself, very important. And continuing to work on healing from the abuse or neglect you experienced. Learn to identify and manage your emotions, especially the emotions of shame, anger, and fear. And lastly, work towards having equal romantic relationships.
When intervening in an abusive relationship as an outsider, caution is warranted when trying to help IPV victims in leaving an abusive relationship because intervention is potentially dangerous for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Unsolicited intervention can feel disrespectful and controlling. Victims must make their own decisions to leave or take actions such as reporting stalking to authorities. We often have to tame our impulse to rescue and instead offer emotional support and tools for empowerment. The National Domestic Violence Hotline will help individuals develop plans that fit each situation. A working knowledge of domestic violence risk factors is important to facilitate early detection. So if you or someone you know is being abused, the following suggestions and resources might offer a helpful healing path. One is help the person identify and name the abuse. Help create a timeline of the abuse so she or he can see the patterns and cycles of it. This shit is very helpful. Ask the person specific questions in non-threatening ways to show him or her that this behavior is abusive. Ask what their concerns are. Help the person identify reasons for abuse as excuses. Consider the victim as an expert. Don't assume that the abuser is male until you're told the gender of the person.
Because everybody can be an abuser and anybody can be an abused.
What the fuck does that even matter?
Right?
Talk to the person away from the abuser. Let the survivor of the abuse set the pace and tone. Provide this person with as many resources and information as possible, and we will be listing resources in our description. Suggest that the person find a counselor especially skilled in the dynamics of relationship violence.
Yeah. So never try to force a survivor to leave or remove them from the situation, because that action, just like the abuser experiencing, violates the survivor's autonomy. So how to distance yourself or remove yourself from an abusive, toxic relationship or situation. You cannot change another person, but changing your behavior will change the relationship. You need to support to restore the trust in yourself and others that becomes damaged in an abusive relationship. Find help to set boundaries and raise your self-esteem. Get information and challenge your denial. A professional is the best person to help you because you can build your self-esteem and learn how to help yourself without feeling judged or rushed into taking action. So check low-fee clinics in your city and learn all you can from books and online resources and forums. Also, find a support group.
Yeah. A sure sense of your core values will give you more confidence so that you can detect the very early warning signs of abuse. Once you identify you're in an unsafe relationship, next you must focus on a plan and on getting support. So, things you should do in order, like as part of your plan, is open a bank and credit cards in your own name. Have a safe place to go with a friend or relative. Have a bag packed at the place with necessary valuables and important legal papers such as your passport, bank information, credit cards, phone book, and money. Also pack for your children if you have any. Make extra car and house keys. Hide a car key outside so you can get away in the case you have to. If there's a weapon in the home, remove it.
Very important. So, what does a healthy relationship look like? An important part of a healthy relationship is loving yourself. I feel like that's number one for almost any situation in life, right? Also, very communicative. So, if you're not communicating with your partner, there might be things that can go wrong very easily. You value each other's opinions, feelings, and needs, and give each other the freedom to be yourself. You believe what your partner has to say, and it doesn't feel like you need to prove each other's trustworthiness. You're honest with each other, but can still keep some things private. You make decisions together and hold each other to the same standards. You talk openly about sexual and reproductive choices together, and you set boundaries. So, the importance of boundaries is that you enjoy spending time apart, alone, or with others without the fear or judgment from your partners, right? You respect each other's need for time and space apart, and you communicate with each other about what you are or aren't comfortable with.
By not confronting abuse to avoid the risk of losing someone's love, you're risking losing yourself.
Wow.
So, learning how to cultivate a healthy relationship with yourself, having self-love is very important. Learning to allow healthy relationships with others unfold is extremely important. You want to be sure that your caution is proactive rather than reactive. You want it based on trusting your instincts rather than distrusting love. Now, these are some themes in those who have left. There's personal growth. So being clear about the nature of the abuse and having a vision of what a healthy relationship looks like is important. Having a social support, we emphasize that it includes family, friends, therapists, social workers, pastors, a belief in God if that's what you choose. But the larger point is that these people didn't feel isolated as the ones who stayed did. We function more coherently and responsibly when we are not isolated and are part of a group because of shit like gaslighting. There was also the need to protect your children. This wasn't about protecting the children per se, but making sure that they weren't shaped by witnessing the abuse.
Yeah.
And finally, the fear of escalation. Again, the perception of a tipping point becomes a motivation for saving yourself.
So, how do you stop the repeating cycles of abuse within your relationship? Understand and recognize what the cycle of abuse looks like, which was what I described at the top of the episode, which is tension, incident, reconciliation, and calm, or the honeymoon stage. And in all cases, the responsibility of the abuse lies within the abuser. No matter what you did or didn't do, abuse is never your fault, so don't blame yourself or allow others to victim blame you. Also, change your perception. If you were in an abusive relationship, you can't change the past, but you can change your reaction. So break free from your abuser by refusing to give them the power over you. Change your mentality from victimhood to survivor and start healing and rebuilding your confidence and power.
Taking accountability for the situation you're in is important. Once you take back your power and regain your self-esteem, you won't allow someone to abuse you. Okay, so to make it a little bit more personal, I will say that there are certain things in the research that we conducted that were alarming to me, and that in hindsight, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize. I thought it was normal.
Right. Like, for example, like stalking is considered abuse.
I didn't know that wasn't abusive. Because I thought that it just kind of implied to someone that you were in a relationship with currently.
Yeah.
I know that was weird behavior, but I didn't think that it was like a form of abuse. But it makes sense because you're still like threatening and making a person feel
unsafe.
Yeah.
So I feel like we talked a lot about
partners,
intimate partner violence and domestic abuse. But I also want to emphasize that abuse is not just within a romantic partner situation. It's within families, it's within friends, it's also in the workplace, within your coworkers or your superiors, which can and within all those contexts there's nuances, because you are working with these people every single day. So what are you gonna do? You have family abusing you, like, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, you feel loyalty to them.
Yeah,
it could be your very own child breaking shit up in the house. Guess what? You're making whoever it is that lives with you
paranoid.
Go through all of those things that we mentioned, as far as how you feel, chronic stress, fucking obsessive thoughts, isolation. Like, these are, so it's kind of like, who are we speaking to necessarily? I'm not necessarily speaking to anybody who's in an abusive situation. I'm speaking just in general for us to identify if we ever have been, if we are. And if that's the case, then that's why we're mentioning the next steps to take.
Yeah.
But I'm also speaking to people who may not realize the seriousness in a casual smack in the face, because that shit is not casual,
or putting somebody down, because abuse is not always physical or sexual.
Yo, you know what?
Which I feel it's worth to say that sometimes emotional abuse victims or survivors, which I like to use better than just victims, emotional abuse survivors probably. So there's a statistics that survivors of abusive relationships have to go seven times. You need
at least like 7 offenses before you leave.
No, it's like they try to leave 7 times before they actually leave for good the last time. So they try to leave 7 times before they leave for good.
It's not that they experience 7 different forms.
It's like they try to leave 7 times. But I feel like what I was saying about emotional abuse, I feel like it's so gray space, not black and white, as actually seeing bruises on your body and feeling the effects of physical or sexual abuse. So emotional abuse is way more mental and psychological.
It's psychological.
So it takes people longer to actually get that they are being abused.
And many scientists and researchers have said that the emotional abuse has longer lasting effects because it's deteriorating your identity, your confidence, and your judgment. And I feel like I've experienced that shit.
So have I.
Like, I remember there being a point where I wish that I just got beat like the fuck up, so I can clearly be like, oh, okay, this was wrong. And it's like, this is just as wrong. I'm not about to sit here and wait for a shove of the face to become a black eye.
Yeah.
And nobody should wait around to see that happen.
Right.
Regardless of whatever the fuck you acknowledge. Once a certain boundary has been crossed, it's very difficult for you to take that back.
Yeah.
So, given that you have experienced toxic behavior from people, projections and whatnot, even fucking wishing the worst on your endeavors, what can you say when you experience actual a healthy dynamic with someone? Like, do you know what that feels like or looks like personally?
I think so. I think with time I can tell. It's hard because abuse doesn't just start with a slap in the face or just telling you you're a piece of shit. It creeps up, right? It creeps up on you. So when I was in the situation, it crept up on me. And I think for romantic, well, this can be said for any dynamic, but in particular for romantic relationships, the abuse within that, it's you're in love with the person, so love is a freaking chemical hormone, and that shit will fuck your mind up, so you're not seeing things clearly.
Right.
So I feel like I can, for the most part, identify healthy relationships. I know that I have that with the friends that I have right now and like the current family members that I have in my family, because I have experienced toxic relationships within my family and I have cut those people out of my life because it was healthier. Like I had to be here. Like I couldn't, it was either them or me.
Yes.
So I chose myself. So yes, that answer your question.
Yeah, sure. I wanted to mention how so often in passing or from elders, we will hear them say, and I'm going to say it in Spanish and translate it, mejor un diablo conocido que un diablo que conocer. AKA, it's better the devil you know than the devil that you still don't know or you still have to know. And I just want to say that's complete, utter bullshit. Fuck your grandmothers for ever saying that shit to me. How dare you say some shit like that to me. You don't need to put up with no fucking shit from nobody.
Period.
No abuse from nobody.
Ever.
If you know that the devil is...
The devil.
The
fuck?
Go get a fucking bath from the santera or something, but go turn on some sage. Let that shit go.
Yeah.
You got your own demon.
Get the fuck out of there.
You got
we all got our own demons.
Run. If somebody's mother tells you that shit about their fucking child who's abusive to you, run. Because this is an appeaser of their fucking abuse and their violence, and they don't care about what you're going through or what that person did to you. They're basically telling you, put up with that because the next person is going to treat you the same way. But if you know your deservedness and you know your worth and you can identify, oh, this person actually treats me with dignity. You know what? That's the most basic shit ever. Like, I've been in situations where a person is like dead ass telling me, oh, but I treat you with respect and, we have like these conversations, and I'm like, oh, you know what? That's crazy because that's the bare minimum.
Yes, the bare minimum is not indicative of a healthy relationship.
No, it's not impressive. That's exactly how you should treat me, with fucking respect. So all I'm saying is, don't believe the hype of these old ass people or whoever the fuck is telling you this shit. Because
they stayed in their abusive relationship, so they're only perpetuating the shit to you now.
Yeah.
That's repeating the cycle. And that's why we mentioned, if you're an abuser or have been abused, maybe evaluate before you like decide to have kids and get help and deal with that shit before you keep perpetuating that bullshit.
Also, I'm in a healthy relationship now.
Yes.
And it's so much fun.
Refreshing.
It's like you're finally with someone who doesn't make you feel like you need to fucking like prove your worth. You're with someone that makes you feel like it's not all about them. And that if it means saying no to them for certain things, they respect it, because when you say yes to someone else, you're saying no to yourself technically. It's just a very interesting dynamic when you're with someone that loves you.
Yeah.
Because they take care of you. And when you come from being abused and molded, right? The whole 16 to 24 shit. When you come from that and that's your like experience.
Right.
Because these forms of abuse are what shape a lot of people's very first experiences when it comes to being in relationships.
Right.
And that shit is so crazy, because when you're finally out, either you repeat the cycles of abuse with different people, and then when you finally like notice certain things and like you start moving different and demanding the respect and love that you need and stuff, like you're actually prioritizing yourself. When you have someone like that, it just makes you wonder, like, what the fuck
were you doing
this
before?
Is so crazy. Like, it's like, oh, this is real. And you have to constantly remind yourself that you deserve this. You deserve to be happy. You deserve to be with someone that respects you, someone that wants the best for you. Like, don't go self-sabotaging that shit.
Oof, that's
because
important.
you may feel like you're not worthy enough or whatever the fuck, because if you're with the person who really loves you, that's not even a thought.
Mm-hmm.
So shout out to you, boo. Shout out to fucking real love, not this not this bullshit of like I'm gonna fucking put up with whatever.
Love.
Like, no. Where are we going?
Where are we going? Who's driving this vehicle? Because you're crashing us.
Riding where? I have questions.
I have comments, questions, and concerns, and many of them.
Okay, I got something else to say.
Se abrió la tipa.
Yo,
open.
All right, so you see how they say the way that they treat their mother says a lot about how they treat you. That shit is so true.
It is.
It's very true. And the way that their mother reacts or like treats you says a lot too, because in many cases, when it comes to abuse in family, and when it comes to repeating the cycle of abuse that you have experienced or you saw growing up, it's what you learned, right? Just like with addiction. When you have addiction in your family, you have a higher chance of repeating that same form of abuse.
Right.
So when it comes to domestic violence, the same shit applies, unfortunately. And that is why we must be very honest with the shit that we experienced as children in our household and within like the community that we grew up in, because it could be an indicator of how we handle our situations.
It's very, very
unconsciously true. Or not. So if their mama or whoever, you know, they like are closest with as far as like parentals or guardians. If they just think that shit is like a phase, they're appeasing this person's abuse.
Yeah. Or just
and
minimizing
chances are they are victims who never escape the situation. So don't ever get it fucked up that just because the mother likes you, that they have their best fucking interest at heart for you. Because that's not your mother. That's not your mama. And you also don't know what fucking like sense of worth they feel. Maybe they think that your role in a relationship should be to be submissive and to just take what you get. And to that I say, split. Like,
fuck that.
Fuck that. And stand up for yourself.
Ja.
Period. Okay, I'm done. And just to be sensitive on this, I understand that I can't expect somebody who has been abused and never found a support system or a way of like escaping to give me advice.
Right.
Because you're still a victim.
But they shouldn't be also giving you advice to stay in your But
abusive. That's all they know. So that's why you need to have your own judgment.
Yeah.
Because you could be getting advice from somebody who never left. Who would have been... Who, if you follow their footsteps, you're going to be very miserable.
End up in the same way.
And end up
perpetuating the
either
same
in
things.
the same way or dead.
Oof, worse.
Because what's the worst case scenario here? Death. So miss me with that shit. Anyways, thank you for tuning in. I hope that this... I don't know, brought some type of awareness to maybe a situation that you was just downplaying and shit.
So our call to action for this episode would be to, I'm just gonna link the National Domestic Violence Hotline. They have a website, which is ncadv.org, but their numbers, if you want to call, it's all anonymous. It's 1-800-799-7233 or 1-800-787-3224. And you can go on there and talk freely about what you're experiencing. Also, you don't have to be abused. A lot of the calls that they get are from like friends or people concerned of somebody, a loved one, that they know that is in an abusive relationship, so you can like talk to them to like get perspective and find ways and get help in like what next steps can be,
because every circumstance is very specific, and this is not just the like one size fits all, and that's why we just need to give respect to the current victims of these circumstances, because the last thing we want to do is put anyone in a detrimental position more than they already are. Right. So I want to close this with a part of a personal piece. It's kind of sad, but if you relate to this, then it's worth thinking about what you truly deserve in a relationship and from yourself. And it goes, I cried for years. I cried till the tears ran dry. I defended you from me.
And my closing quote, to end on a more hopeful note for everybody listening, is a healthy relationship is one in which love enriches you, not imprisons you. And this is by Steve Maraboli. So yeah, that was our episode 6 on relationships. We hope that this was very informative for you all.
Cases, keep it cute.
Case closed.
Oh. When Baytex.